I always thought love was built on mutual respect, on lifting each other up, on being genuinely proud of the person standing by your side. For years, I believed that Haley, the woman I planned to spend my life with, shared that belief. Turns out, I was wrong. And I didn't figure that out in some quiet, private moment where we could have talked it through. No. I found out last night, in front of a whole damn room full of people. If someone had told me a week ago that I'd be sitting here, single, humiliated, and questioning everything I thought I knew about my relationship, I would have laughed in their face. Haley and I had been together for 3 years, engaged for 1, and we'd built a life together, or at least, I thought we had. She worked in corporate finance, a world of tailored suits, high-stakes networking events, and people who measured success by the numbers in their bank accounts. Meanwhile, I ran my own auto repair shop. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. I built it from nothing, poured years of sweat and dedication into making it successful. I wasn't rich, but I was proud. Haley always claimed she admired that about me, how hands-on I was, how I could take something broken and make it work again. She said she loved that I wasn't like the guys in her office, that I had actual skills, real talent. Maybe that was true once. Or maybe I was just too blind to see what she really thought of me. Last night changed everything. For weeks, Haley had been hyping up this office party, an annual event her firm hosted at some high-rise in the city. The kind of place where the waiters wear white gloves, the champagne never stops flowing, and everyone pretends they don't hate each other. "It's a big deal," she kept telling me. "The partners will be there. I want them to meet you." Looking back, I don't know if she ever actually wanted them to meet me, or if she just wanted to parade me around as some kind of proof that she was down to earth. I wasn't exactly thrilled about going. I knew these kinds of events weren't my thing. But I wanted to support her, so I put on the navy suit she bought me, made sure my shoes were polished, and did my best to prepare for a night of awkward small talk with people who had no real interest in knowing me. The party was exactly what I expected. Over the top, fancy as hell, the kind of event where people smiled too wide and laughed too loud at jokes that weren't funny. Haley looked stunning, dressed in a sleek black number that turned heads the second she walked in. And as she worked the room, introducing me to people whose names I immediately forgot, I tried my best to play along. At first, it wasn't so bad. I stayed at the edges of conversations, nodded in the right places, and let Haley do most of the talking. Then, somewhere between the second and third round of drinks, things took a turn. I was standing by the bar, sipping a whiskey, when I heard laughter erupt from a group nearby. A big, booming kind of laughter that made my stomach twist. Haley was in the middle of it, holding her glass high, grinning as she spoke animatedly. I wasn't paying much attention, until I heard my own name. "Lucas's little car shop," she said, giggling. "He calls it a business, but let's be honest, it's really just a glorified garage." The group erupted into laughter again, a deep, stomach-sinking kind of laugh. I froze. Wait, get this," Haley continued, still grinning. "One time, he tried to explain something about engines to me, and I swear I had no idea what he was saying. I just kept nodding along like, sure, babe." More laughter. "I mean, come on, it's cute, right? My little grease monkey. My little grease monkey." I felt my pulse hammering in my ears. The people surrounding her weren't just laughing at some harmless joke. They were laughing at me. I wasn't some overly sensitive guy. I could take a joke. But this wasn't light-hearted teasing. This was my fiancée, the woman I had supported in every way I knew how, making me the punchline in front of her colleagues. The same colleagues she had always claimed she wanted to impress. And that's when it hit me. She wasn't laughing with me. She was laughing at me. I felt like a complete idiot. How long had this been happening? How many times had she brushed off my work as if it were just a temporary phase? How many subtle jabs had I ignored, chalking them up to nothing? A slow, burning anger coiled in my chest. I had 2 choices. I could swallow it, pretend it didn't matter, play along like I had no pride. Or I could make it crystal clear that I wasn't about to be the fool in her story. I made my choice. I walked toward the group. The laughter quieted when they noticed me approaching. Haley turned, still smiling, until she saw my face. "Oh, hey, babe," she said, her voice dripping with that same condescending sweetness she had used in her little comedy routine. "We were just talking about..." Do you actually respect me? I asked, my voice calm. She blinked. The room seemed to pause. What? I repeated myself, keeping my voice steady. Do you respect me? My work? My career? Or am I just some joke to you? The smile on her face flickered, then faltered completely. Lucas, come on, she said, rolling her eyes. Don't be like that. It was just a joke. I finished for her. Because it sure as hell didn't feel like one. Her friends shifted uncomfortably, some glancing away, suddenly finding their drinks very interesting. Haley sighed, rubbing her forehead like I was the one making a scene. God, you're overreacting. Can't you take a little teasing? I took a slow breath, steadying myself. I wasn't about to let her turn this into me being too sensitive. I reached into my pocket, pulled out something small, and placed it on the table in front of her. Her engagement ring. The reaction was instant. Someone muttered, "Oh my God!" A glass clinked against a table. Someone else actually gasped. Haley stared at the ring as if it was a foreign object. What are you doing?" she stammered. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't make a scene. I just looked her in the eyes and said the words that had been forming in my mind ever since she first opened her mouth to mock me. "I'm done." Her face went pale. "Lucas, no." I shook my head. "I deserve someone who actually respects me. And you? You deserve an audience that doesn't mind laughing at the people they claim to love." And with that, I turned and walked out of the party, leaving behind the woman I had once thought I'd spend forever with. As I stepped into the cool night air, I expected to feel heartbroken, maybe even full of regret. Instead, I felt something else entirely. Relief. I stepped out of that high-rise feeling like I had just dropped a weight I didn't even realize I'd been carrying for years. The cold night air hit my face, and for the first time in a long time, I could actually breathe. I had just walked away from my engagement, from 3 years of my life, from the woman I thought I was going to marry. And yet, I didn't feel regret. I didn't feel loss. I felt free. But that freedom was short-lived. I barely made it down the sidewalk before my phone started buzzing in my pocket. I didn't even need to look to know who it was. Haley. I ignored the call. Then another one came in. And another. By the time I reached my truck, I had 6 missed calls and 2 text messages. "Lucas, what are you doing? Come back inside. Don't be stupid." I let out a bitter laugh. Don't be stupid. Right. Because walking out on a woman who humiliated me in front of an entire room was the dumb decision. I didn't respond. Instead, I climbed into my truck, started the engine, and drove. I didn't know where I was going, only that I couldn't go home. Not yet. Haley and I lived together, and the last thing I wanted was to walk into an apartment filled with her things. Her perfume lingering in the air. Her framed pictures staring at me from the walls. So I just drove. Then, my phone buzzed again. This time, a different name lit up the screen. Ethan. My best friend since college. If there was one person who had my back through this mess, it was him. I picked up. "Dude. What the hell just happened?" were the first words out of his mouth. I frowned. "How do you even know already?" "I just got a call from Brandon." Brandon was one of Haley's co-workers. Not exactly my friend, but we'd hung out a few times at work events. "What did he say?" I asked. "He said Haley's freaking out. Crying in the bathroom. Apparently, you just threw your ring on a table and walked out in front of everyone." That's exactly what happened. There was silence on the other end. Then, Ethan burst out laughing. Full, uncontrollable laughter. "Dude. That's legendary." I sighed, shaking my head. Not exactly how I planned to spend my Friday night. His tone turned more serious. "You okay?" I thought about it. Was I okay? Not really. But I wasn't falling apart, either. "I will be," I finally said. "Good. Where are you?" "No idea. Just driving." "Come over. I've got whiskey and bad movies. You need to process this." I hesitated. I wasn't really in the mood to talk about it all just yet. But the alternative was aimlessly driving around all night, or worse, going home and facing the wreckage of my relationship head-on. So I turned my truck toward Ethan's place. What I didn't know at the time was that Haley was in full meltdown mode. From what I heard later, the second I left, she bolted to the bathroom, sobbing. Her perfect night, her big, glamorous event, had just turned into a full-blown scandal. People were talking. Whispers spread through the room like wildfire. Because, let's be honest, who wouldn't talk about it? A woman openly mocks her fiancé in front of an entire party. He calmly takes off his engagement ring, places it on the table, and walks out. That's the kind of drama people remember. Some people took her side, saying I had overreacted, that it was just teasing. But others, they saw what I saw. She didn't just tease him, one of the interns apparently said. She humiliated him. And now she's acting shocked that he left. I wasn't there to witness it, but from what I later gathered, Haley spent the rest of the night trying to save face, telling anyone who would listen that she didn't mean it, that I was too sensitive, that I was immature for walking out. But here's the thing about moments like this, you don't get to control the narrative when you publicly embarrass someone. People saw what they saw, and the story they walked away with, it wasn't in her favor. I pulled into Ethan's driveway and barely had time to get out of the truck before he was already standing at the door, holding up 2 glasses of whiskey like some kind of bartender at an apocalypse shelter. "All right," he said, handing me one. "Start from the top." I took the glass and sank onto his couch. For the next hour, I told him everything. How the night started. How it felt to stand there, listening to my own fiancé turn me into some kind of joke. How something inside me just snapped. Ethan listened. He didn't interrupt. Didn't try to downplay it. He just let me talk. And by the time I finished, I actually felt lighter. "So," he said, swirling his whiskey in his glass. "What now?" I exhaled slowly. "I don't know. Are you moving out?" I stiffened. I hadn't even thought that far ahead. Haley and I lived together. Everything in that apartment had both of our names on it, rent, bills, furniture. And now I had no idea how to handle that. Before I could even respond, my phone lit up again. But this time, it wasn't a call. It was a text. "Haley, you humiliated me tonight. I don't deserve that. You need to come home so we can talk." I stared at my phone, my jaw tightening. Humiliated her? I took a sip of whiskey, shaking my head. "Haley," Ethan guessed. I turned the phone so he could see the text. He read it, then scoffed. "Oh, hell no." I didn't respond. I didn't know how to respond. But something told me this wasn't the last I'd hear from her. Not even close. I stared at my phone for a long time, my thumb hovering over the screen. Every instinct in me told me not to reply. I had already said everything I needed to say when I walked out of that party. There was no misunderstanding. No miscommunication. Haley had openly mocked me in front of her co-workers. And now that her perfect night had spiraled into disaster, she wanted to shift the blame. She wasn't sorry for what she did. She was sorry that people saw the consequences. Ethan took another sip of his whiskey and shook his head. "Dude, she's not worth the headache. If you respond, she'll twist it. Make herself the victim." I already knew that. Haley was good at controlling the story. It's what made her so successful in her job, her ability to spin things, to make herself look polished and perfect no matter the situation. But this wasn't her office. This wasn't a boardroom where she could gaslight her way into looking like the reasonable one. I turned my phone over and let out a deep breath. "I'm not going home tonight." Ethan smirked. "Obviously. But what's your game plan?" That was the million-dollar question. My life had flipped upside down in the span of an hour. I wasn't about to go back to the apartment we shared, crawl into bed beside her, and pretend like any of this could be undone. "She'll probably be waiting for me if I go back," I muttered. "Definitely," Ethan agreed. "And she's going to put on the show of a lifetime. Crying. Apologizing. Spinning this into a simple misunderstanding. Anything to get you to stay." I ran a hand over my face. I just didn't get it. How had I missed this for so long? I barely slept that night. Even with Ethan's whiskey, Even with his old action movies playing in the background, my mind wouldn't shut off. I kept replaying everything. Haley's laughter, the way her co-workers had looked at me, the moment I put the ring on the table. And underneath all of that, a nagging question kept creeping in. Had this been happening all along? I had spent 3 years with Haley. 3 years thinking we were partners, thinking she respected me, thinking we were building something real together. But now, I couldn't stop wondering, how many times had she laughed at me when I wasn't around? How many little digs had I ignored because I was too caught up in loving her to see what was right in front of me? I didn't have an answer. What I did know was that I couldn't stay in limbo forever. I needed to go back to the apartment. Not to fix anything, not to talk, but to grab my essentials before Haley had a chance to pull something. The thought of walking into that apartment made my stomach twist, but I knew if I waited too long, she might decide to make things even harder for me. And if there was one thing I was sure of, it was that Haley was the type of person who hated losing control. I had barely finished that thought when my phone buzzed again. Another text. Haley, I don't want to do this over text. Please don't make this bigger than it needs to be. I let out a bitter laugh. Bigger than it needs to be. She had humiliated me in front of an entire room of people. My friends. Her colleagues. Strangers who would probably be whispering about it at the office on Monday morning. And now that I'd actually reacted, she wanted to downplay it. I stood up, grabbing my keys. I need to go get some of my stuff before she pulls something. Ethan shot me a look. You sure that's a good idea? I'm not staying the night there, I reassured him. I just need my essentials, clothes, my work laptop, stuff I can't afford to leave behind. Ethan sighed but stood up too. All right then. I'm coming with you. I frowned. Dude, you don't have to. No way am I letting you walk into that alone. I didn't argue. Having someone else there would keep things from spiraling into whatever manipulation Haley had planned. We drove in silence. The closer we got to the apartment, the tighter my grip on the steering wheel became. My mind ran through every possible way this could go. Would she be waiting? Would she be angry? Would she be crying? I already knew one thing. Whatever happened, it wouldn't be simple. When I pulled into the parking lot, I wasn't surprised to see that the lights in our apartment were still on. She was awake. Waiting. Ethan shot me a look. If she starts crying, don't fall for it. I nodded. I won't. But as soon as I stepped through the door, I knew this wasn't going to be easy. Haley was sitting on the couch, her makeup smudged, eyes red and puffy. She had been crying, or at least, she wanted it to look like she had been crying. The second she saw me, she shot up. Lucas. I held up a hand. I'm just here to get some of my things. Her eyes flickered past me, landing on Ethan. A flash of irritation crossed her face before she forced a shaky breath. Can we talk? She asked. I hesitated. I knew what she was trying to do. Corner me, guilt me, break me down. But I also knew that if I left anything valuable here, I might never get it back. So I made a decision. I'll listen, I said, keeping my voice firm. After I grab my stuff. Haley exhaled like she had just won some kind of battle. But she didn't say anything as I walked past her into our shared bedroom. Ethan followed, leaning against the doorframe while I grabbed a duffel bag from the closet. She's already starting, he muttered. I shoved some clothes into the bag. Yeah, I know. When I walked back into the living room, Haley was still sitting on the couch. Her hands were gripping the fabric of her dress so tightly that her knuckles had turned white. I messed up, she whispered. I didn't respond. I wasn't trying to hurt you, she continued. I got caught up in the moment. It was stupid. I shouldn't have said those things. I folded my arms. You didn't just say those things, Haley. You made a joke out of me. You laughed at me. In front of everyone. She winced, but quickly tried to recover. It was just banter, Lucas. Everyone was joking around. No, I shook my head. They were laughing at me. Because of you. She swallowed hard. Lucas, please. I love you. I don't want to lose you over one stupid night. And there it was. The pleading. The desperation. The performance. But something inside me had already snapped at that party. I stared at her for a long moment, waiting for some kind of real remorse. But all I saw was fear. Not fear of losing me. Fear of what people would say if I left. I grabbed my bag, slung it over my shoulder, and walked to the door. "This isn't about one night," I said quietly. "This is about who you really are. And I'm finally seeing it." Her mouth opened, but no words came out. I turned the knob, stepped outside, and let the door close behind me. For the second time that night, I walked away from Haley. And for the first time in years, I wasn't looking back. As soon as I stepped out of that apartment, the weight pressing on my chest loosened, just a little. I could still feel it there, the ache of 3 years wasted on the wrong person. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was in control of my own life. Ethan and I walked in silence to my truck. He didn't push me to talk, didn't ask me if I was okay. He just followed, like a silent bodyguard, making sure I actually left without getting sucked back into whatever manipulation Haley was planning. The moment I unlocked my truck and threw my duffel bag into the back seat, Ethan finally spoke. "You good?" I let out a slow breath. "Yeah, I think so." He raised an eyebrow. "You think so?" I stared at the apartment building, at the light still glowing from what used to be our window. A part of me expected Haley to come storming out, to follow me, to cause a scene right here in the parking lot. But she didn't. Maybe she finally realized she had lost control. Or maybe she was just planning her next move. Either way, I wasn't sticking around to find out. I climbed into my truck, gripping the wheel. "Let's go." Ethan didn't hesitate. He got in his car and followed me back to his place. The drive was quiet. My thoughts were a storm, replaying everything that had happened tonight. Every word, every fake apology, every sign I had ignored for too long. Then, my phone buzzed. "Haley again." I groaned, resisting the urge to throw my phone into the glove compartment. But curiosity got the best of me. I glanced at the screen. 10 missed calls. 3 voicemails. And then the texts. "I can't believe you just walked out like that. This isn't fair. You're being dramatic. Haley, Lucas, we built a life together. Are you really going to throw it all away over a stupid joke? Say something. Please." I didn't reply. I wasn't about to be guilt-tripped into staying with someone who had no real respect for me. I woke up to Ethan cursing in the kitchen. Groggy, I rubbed my eyes and sat up on his couch, my body sore from sleeping in a position that was never meant for actual rest. "What?" I muttered, still half asleep. Ethan stormed into the living room, his phone in hand, his expression somewhere between amusement and disbelief. "Dude, check your social media." A sinking feeling settled in my stomach. I grabbed my phone off the coffee table and hesitated before opening it. I already knew Haley was the type to spin a situation in her favor. But I didn't expect her to take it public. And yet, there it was. A long, dramatic Facebook post. I never thought I'd be posting something like this, but I need to speak my truth. Last night, the man I loved and planned to marry abandoned me in front of all my friends and colleagues over a harmless joke. A joke that wasn't meant to hurt him. Instead, he decided to humiliate me by throwing our engagement away in the most dramatic way possible. I have supported him in every way I could, and this is how he repays me? By walking out like I never meant anything to him? I'm heartbroken. I don't deserve this. Hundreds of comments. Some from her friends, blindly defending her. "Wow, he sounds so immature. You're better off, babe. If he couldn't handle a joke, imagine how he would handle marriage. Good riddance, you dodged a bullet." But then, there were other comments. People who had actually been at the party. People who had seen what really happened. I was at that party, and Haley, that wasn't a harmless joke. You made fun of him in front of everyone. I saw the whole thing. You didn't just tease him. You mocked his entire career like it was beneath you. You're not a victim here. You're just mad he had the self-respect to walk away. And then, the kicker. Someone had filmed it. Attached to one of the comments was a video clip. A clip of Haley standing in the middle of the party, laughing, mimicking me, calling me her little grease monkey while her friends laughed along. And then, at the very end of the video, you could see me, walking up, placing the engagement ring on the table, and leaving without a word. Undeniable proof that she was twisting the story. And people were seeing through her lies. Ethan whistled, peering over my shoulder at the screen. Well, that blew up in her face, huh? I exhaled sharply, running a hand through my hair. Lucas, Ethan said. You don't have to say anything. She already lost. He was right. Hailey had tried to control the damage. Instead, she had just exposed herself. For the first time since this all started, I actually smiled. I spent the next few hours making some calls. First, to our landlord. I wanted to formally break the lease and get my name off of it. That way, Hailey couldn't try to stick me with half the rent after I left. Next, to the bank. We had a shared account for bills, and I wasn't about to let her drain it out of spite. I made sure to transfer my half out and remove my name from everything. And finally, I called a moving company. Because there was no way in hell I was packing up my stuff alone. By the time I was done, Ethan looked at me with newfound respect. Damn. You really thought this through. I shrugged. Hailey might be manipulative, but she's not smart enough to outplay me. He grinned. Love to see it. But as much as I wanted to believe that I had covered all my bases, nothing could have prepared me for what happened next. 2 hours later, I pulled into the apartment complex with a moving truck right behind me. I had warned the movers that this might not be a smooth process, and they assured me they'd work quickly. That was the plan. Get in, grab my things, get out before Hailey had the chance to pull anything. But the moment I stepped out of my truck, I knew something was off. Because standing right in front of our apartment door was Hailey. And she wasn't alone. She had brought her mother. I groaned internally. Hailey's mom, Karen, was exactly what you'd expect from someone with that name. Entitled, controlling, and somehow even more manipulative than her daughter. I barely made it 2 steps before Karen stormed toward me, eyes blazing. What do you think you're doing? I sighed. Getting my stuff. You're being childish, she snapped. Hailey has been crying all day. Do you really think this is the right way to handle things? I folded my arms. You mean the way she handled things? By mocking me in front of her entire company? By twisting the story online? Karen scoffed. Oh, please. It was a joke. You men are so sensitive these days. I clenched my jaw. I don't have time for this. I turned to the movers. Everything in the bedroom is mine. Take the work desk, the bookshelves, the TV, and everything in the second closet. Leave everything else. Hailey's voice finally cut through. You don't get to decide what's yours and what's mine. I turned to look at her. She looked like she hadn't slept. Her hair was a mess, and she was still wearing the same clothes from last night. You agreed to split the furniture when we moved in, I reminded her. You have the receipts for the couch and the dining set. I have the receipts for everything in the bedroom and office. It's already divided. She scowled. That's not fair. I stared at her. Nothing about this has been fair. She clenched her fists, her eyes darting between me and the movers, like she was trying to come up with a new angle. Then, her face crumbled. And she started crying. Big, dramatic sobs. Tears streaming down her face. Hands shaking. The whole performance. I felt nothing. Because I had seen this act before. Karen immediately jumped in, wrapping an arm around her daughter like I had just committed some kind of crime. Look what you're doing to her, she snapped. She loved you, and you're throwing it all away over one stupid mistake. I exhaled slowly. She didn't make a mistake. A mistake is something you regret. Hailey never regretted it. Not until she realized people weren't on her side. Hailey sniffled loudly. I was drinking. I wasn't thinking straight. I tilted my head. But you were thinking clearly enough to write that Facebook post blaming me for everything. Silence. Her lip quivered. No, I interrupted. I'm not doing this anymore, Hailey. I'm done arguing. I'm done explaining. And I'm done being manipulated. I turned to the movers. Hurry it up, please. Karen lost it. You're nobody, she spat. Haley was too good for you anyway. You'll never find someone like her again. I gave her a small smile. That's the point. By the time I finished packing, Haley was still standing there, shaking, while her mother ranted about how I was a disappointment. But I didn't care. Because I was finally free. And nothing had ever felt better. The sound of the moving truck doors slamming shut felt like the closing chapter of my life with Haley. Everything I owned, everything I had built separately from her, was now packed away, heading to a place that didn't involve her condescension, her manipulation, or her fake apologies. As I watched the truck pull out of the apartment complex parking lot, I exhaled a breath I felt like I had been holding for years. Haley and her mother still stood by the apartment entrance, their eyes burning holes into me. Karen had her arms crossed, lips pressed into a thin line, while Haley was gripping her phone so tightly her knuckles turned white. I had seen that expression before. She was planning something. "You're really doing this?" she finally said, her voice shaking. I turned to look at her, studying the face of the woman I had once imagined spending my life with. A face I no longer recognized. "I already did." Karen scoffed. "You're making a mistake. You're walking away from a woman who loves you." I let out a humorless laugh. "No," I said. "I'm walking away from a woman who only loved me when it was convenient. A woman who respected me in private but mocked me in public. A woman who never actually valued me." Haley opened her mouth to respond, but I cut her off. "I hope you enjoy your perfect little corporate world, Haley, the one where people pretend to be friends while stabbing each other in the back. The one where you care more about impressing your boss than respecting the person you were supposed to marry." Her jaw tightened. "But me," I continued. "I'm done being the joke in your story." For the first time that night, she didn't have a comeback. Her eyes darted around, as if searching for something, some last-ditch effort to keep control of the situation. But there was nothing left to manipulate. I was already gone. Without another word, I got into my truck, started the engine, and pulled out of the parking lot, leaving behind the last 3 years of my life in the rearview mirror. I drove in silence. No music. No radio. Just the quiet hum of the road beneath my tires and the steady drum of my own thoughts. My hands were gripping the wheel tighter than necessary, my knuckles stiff and white. My heart still pounded with the aftershock of everything that had just happened. It was over. For real this time. No more late-night fights where I second-guessed myself. No more walking on eggshells, trying to avoid her subtle digs at my career. No more pretending I didn't hear the way she talked about me to her friends when she thought I wasn't listening. I was finally free. So why did my stomach feel like it was tied in knots? I had spent years picturing a future with Haley. A home. A family. A partnership. And now, all of that was gone, like someone had taken an eraser and wiped the entire picture away. Maybe that was why I felt hollow. I wasn't mourning her. I was mourning the future I had tricked myself into believing we had. I pulled into Ethan's driveway, shut off the engine, and just sat there for a moment, letting the weight of the night settle into my bones. Ethan must have been watching for me because the second I stepped out of the truck, he was already on the porch, beer in hand, waiting like some kind of emotional first responder. "All right," he said, cracking open the bottle and handing it to me. "Tell me everything." We sat outside for a long time, the night air cool against my skin, the faint hum of crickets filling the silence. I told Ethan everything. The final confrontation, the way Haley tried to twist it, how Karen jumped in like some kind of villainous sidekick, and how, for the first time in years, I had finally stood my ground. Ethan whistled low. "Damn. I wish I could have seen her face when you walked out of there." I let out a dry chuckle. It wasn't pretty. He took a sip of his beer, leaning back against the porch railing. "So, what's next?" That was the real question, wasn't it? What now? I had spent so much time fighting to be respected in my own relationship that I had never really thought about what life would look like after. "I don't know," I admitted. "I mean, I gotta figure out a new place to live, sort through all my stuff, and somehow move on from all of this." Ethan nodded. "You got a place in mind?" I sighed, running a hand through my hair. "Not really. I don't want to rush into anything." "Stay here," Ethan said casually. "At least for now. Give yourself time to get your head straight." I hesitated. I don't want to be a burden. Dude, shut up, he scoffed. You're not a burden. You're my best friend, and you just torpedoed a toxic engagement in the most badass way possible. That deserves at least a few weeks of crashing on my couch. I laughed, shaking my head. I appreciate it, man. He lifted his beer in a toast. To new beginnings. I clinked my bottle against his, taking a slow sip. Maybe new beginnings were exactly what I needed. The next few days were a blur. I started untangling the mess that was my shared life with Haley, canceling accounts, changing addresses, making sure my name was removed from anything connected to her. Haley, on the other hand, she was spiraling. The fallout from her own social media disaster had completely turned against her. The video of her mocking me at the party had spread further than she ever expected, and while some people were still defending her, the overwhelming majority were calling her out. And she hated it. She had already deleted her post after the comments turned against her. But the internet doesn't forget. People from her own office had seen the video. And they weren't impressed. Rumors started flying that her bosses weren't happy, that they didn't want someone who brought that kind of attention to the company. I didn't celebrate her downfall. I wasn't that kind of person. But there was a certain kind of justice in watching the person who once looked down on me finally face real consequences. And just when I thought I had heard the last from her, she called me. Blocked number. I hesitated before answering. The second I did, her voice came through the speaker, raw and desperate. Lucas, please. Can we just talk? I sighed, gripping my phone. After everything, after all the lies, after all the humiliation, she still thought there was something left to say. And maybe there was. But this time, I was the one in control. I stared at my phone, the screen glowing in the dim light of Ethan's living room. Haley's voice was shaky, desperate. It was the first time in days that she had called instead of texting or making a public spectacle. For a moment, I almost believed she was truly remorseful. Almost. But I knew Haley. And I knew this wasn't an apology. It was damage control. I took a deep breath, gripping the phone tighter. What do you want, Haley? Silence. For the first time in 3 years, she didn't have a pre-planned response. No manipulation. No calculated words to twist the situation in her favor. It was like she finally realized that every tool she used to control me was gone. She exhaled shakily. I don't know how to fix this. There it was. Fix this. Not apologize. Not make things right. Not acknowledge that she had destroyed our relationship with her own actions. She just wanted to fix the mess she created. Not because she was sorry, but because she couldn't stand losing. I closed my eyes for a moment, grounding myself. I wasn't going to fall for it. Not this time. Haley, I said, my voice steady. You don't get to fix this. She let out a sharp breath. So that's it. You're really just done. I scoffed. Haley, I walked out in front of everyone. I packed my things. I removed my name from everything. What exactly do you think is left? I don't know, she snapped, her voice breaking. Lucas, I didn't mean to hurt you. I clenched my jaw. You didn't mean for me to leave. Silence. She knew I was right. She never thought I'd actually stand up for myself. She had spent years getting away with these little digs, making herself feel bigger by making me feel smaller. She thought she had broken me down enough that I'd always stay. But she had underestimated me. And now, she was watching everything slip through her fingers. You're overreacting, she muttered. I laughed. A bitter, humorless sound. Haley, relationships aren't measured by what's the worst thing I didn't do. They're about respect. About having your partner's back. She sniffled. I just thought we had more than that. I exhaled slowly. Yeah, I said, my voice firm. So did I. And then I hung up. I didn't wait for a response. I didn't let her try to manipulate her way back into my life. Because I finally understood something. Haley wasn't upset because she lost me. She was upset because she lost control. I set my phone down and exhaled, feeling a strange sense of finality. Ethan, who had been sitting quietly across from me, raised an eyebrow. That sounded intense. I let out a dry chuckle. You could say that. Did she finally apologize? I shook my head. Nope. Just more of the same. She doesn't want to be the bad guy, but she also doesn't actually care about what she did. She just hates that she doesn't get to control the narrative anymore. Ethan took a sip of his drink. So, what now? That was the million-dollar question. I had walked away from my engagement. I had reclaimed my self-respect. But now, I had to figure out who I was without Haley. For so long, I had built my life around her social events, her career, her plans for the future. But now, for the first time in years, I had to start from scratch. And oddly enough, that didn't scare me. It excited me. The next few weeks were a blur of change. I moved into my own apartment. A small but cozy place. Mine, and mine alone. No reminders of Haley. No passive-aggressive comments about my career. Just peace. I focused on my business, throwing myself into my work in a way I hadn't done in years. Without the constant stress of trying to prove my worth to someone who never saw it, I felt lighter. I started going out again. Reconnecting with old friends I had lost touch with, friends Haley never liked. I was reclaiming my life. And then, one evening, as I was closing up my shop, something unexpected happened. A woman walked in. Someone I hadn't seen in years. Sophie. We had known each other back in college. Had even gone on a few dates before life took us in different directions. But standing there in my garage, with her wide smile and warm eyes, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Excitement. We caught up over coffee that night. One coffee turned into a long conversation. One conversation turned into a dinner. A dinner turned into something I never expected. I wasn't just moving on from Haley. I was moving forward. And for the first time in my life, I realized something important. Walking away from Haley wasn't a loss. It was the best decision I had ever made. Because real love, it isn't about trying to impress someone who looks down on you. Real love is about respect. About being valued. About finding someone who sees you, truly sees you, for who you are. And loves you for it. And as I sat there, laughing with Sophie over old memories, I knew my real story was just beginning. Thank you for visited my YouTube channel. Your support, likes, and comments truly inspire me to create even more engaging content. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. You're a part of this amazing community, and I'm thrilled to share my stories with you. See you in the next video on YouTube.